Hi, boys and girls. This is Grandma Sheila, and we have a story from the country of Ethiopia today. Atto, he picked up a big iron bar and he started hitting clang, clang, clang on the big round piece of metal that hung from the acacia tree. Then he looked around and he started again. Clang, clang, clang. It was around 7:30 at the mission hospital, and that big piece of metal rang out like a bell to tell everyone that the mission clinic was open and they could come now. Well, Atto, he took that big bar that he had used to make that big piece of metal vibrate and call the people to come, and he put it under the acacia tree. He would leave it there till afternoon when he would call the people again if they needed to see the doctor or the nurse. Well, he slowly, with his cane, made his way back to the gate of the mission compound. There was a big gate with walls that went all the way around that mission. And Ato Desta, he was the gatekeeper. Every morning at around 7 o'clock, he opened the gate. Well, now that the bell was rung, and there were a few people already there waiting to be seen, Testa went over by the gate. He took his job very seriously, and he was a very happy man. Well, I said he walked with a cane. That was because when he was a small boy, he had been captured by evil soldiers who had beaten him and tortured him because they wanted him to tell them the names of other people that believed in Jesus, and he wouldn't do it. So they were very mean to him, and his body still showed the scars. That's why his one leg didn't work as well as it should. But he was still happy because he had Jesus in his heart. Well, he looked up and he saw that there was a mother, and she was carrying her small child to see the doctor, and she had wrapped him up in her shema, which was the big piece of thin cloth that the Ethiopian ladies wore over top of their dress, and she used it to wrap her baby in. There was also an old woman leading her husband who was blind, and he sat down in the dirt of the courtyard to wait as well. Ato, one of the things he liked to do was he liked to share Jesus with the people when they came to go to the clinic. So he made his way over to that blind man and his wife, and he looked down at them and he said, "Have you heard the story about how Jesus healed the blind man?" Well, he went on with the telling of that story, and soon the courtyard was full of people waiting to see the doctor and the nurse. Well, then there was a commotion at the gate, and Ato rushed to see what needed to be done. And there was a big family, and they had a man in a wheelbarrow that they were pushing, and the man was moaning, "Oh, oh, my leg, my leg." His leg was hanging over the edge of the wheelbarrow, and it was swollen up great big. And one of the family members said, "He got bit by a snake." Well, Ato, he rushed over and he could see that the man that was pushing that wheelbarrow was getting very tired. And he said, "Let me help." So he got a hold of the handles and he started pushing that makeshift ambulance toward the emergency room. When they got to the door, he turned around to the family and he said, "You wait right here. We'll make sure the doctor sees him right away." Well, everybody knew that a snake bite was a serious problem, and those people got to be seen. Well, Atu looked at him and said, "So you were bit by a snake, huh?" And then he said, "Yep, those snakes can be really bad. They're just like the devil, Satan. He likes to lead us astray and trap us in sin." Well, over in the other corner of that courtyard, there were three men that were just idly there talking. They weren't there to see the doctor. But Toe didn't know that, and neither did the other people. The one guy said to his two other friends that were there with him, "Oh," he said, "that guy, Toe DeSenta, he can preach a sermon about anything, anytime. I get so tired of listening to all his Christian talk." Then one of the other men said, "You're right. I think it's time that we do something with him. Let's get rid of him." Ato was known for being a happy man. You know, in the Ethiopian language, his name, Desta, meant happiness, and he was always happy. He was either smiling or preaching or singing. Now, he wasn't a minister and he wasn't a doctor, but he could still tell the people of Ethiopia about Jesus in his own way. Well, that man that had been talking, he stood there and he looked around. He was hoping that no one had heard what he said because most of the people really liked Ato. Well, after that, Ato slowly made his way through the people, telling them each a little bit about Jesus as he went. Then he went over and he sat by the wall. It was noon, and it was the hottest part of the day. He sat down and leaned back against that wall. Every good Ethiopian took a nap in the afternoon during the hottest part of the day, and they always rested from all the work they had to do. Well, Ato had his eyes closed and his head leaned back, and he was sleeping. But Ato had learned that he almost could sleep with one eye open. And pretty soon there was a shadow came over him. And he opened his eyes and he looked and he started to smile again. He said, "Abu, it's you. What can I do for you? Are you well today?" Abu said, "Yes." But Ado noticed that Abu kept looking around. He looked this way and he looked that way, and he looked like he was afraid. Ado said, "What is it?" And Abu said, "I need to tell you something." Then he looked around again. Well, there didn't seem to be anybody paying any attention to them. So Abu, he knelt down really close to Atu, and he said, "My Uncle Zodi, I heard him telling two other men that they were going to kill you. And the two said, kill me? Well, and then Abu went, shh, I don't want anybody to know. My uncle might do something terrible to me if he knew I told you. Well, then footsteps started coming, and Abu, he looked really frightened now. Well, Atu, he stood up and he said, it's time to ring the bell for the afternoon clinic. Abu, would you like to come help ring the bell? Well, Abu's face brightened right up. All the little Ethiopian boys loved to be asked to ring the bell. But then he thought again, and his face grew sad. He said, I don't think I better. I don't think I should be seen with you now. And he disappeared into the crowd of people coming in to go to the clinic. Well, Atu, he went over and he took that big piece of iron again and he went clang, 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 clang on that big piece of iron, so much so that it just vibrated with noise. Well, Atu thought, I don't think I have any enemies, Lord. But if I do, would you please protect me if it's your will? I trust you, Lord. I belong to you, Jesus. Thank you. Well, then he felt better. He had peace in his heart again. And what did he start to do but sing again? Who did he sing about? He always sang about Jesus. Well, he went about his afternoon, and pretty soon it was 6 o'clock. Well, 6 o'clock was the end of Atu Desta's workday at the mission. So he went over to the gatekeeper that had just arrived, and he gave him the key to the gate of the mission. And he said, goodbye. And everybody that went by said, goodbye, Atu. Goodbye. Well, Atu and his cane started walking out the gate. Well, the sun was just sinking. It was a beautiful sunset. Now, Atu had a long walk. He had to walk over the desert hills to get to his house. And there wasn't really a road there. There was just a rocky little path with ditches on each side and gullies that went down. Well, Atu was used to walking on this every night and every morning, and he knew that sometimes hyenas got down in those ditches and would hide to wait to jump up at somebody. But he had his cane, which he could use to protect himself, and sometimes they were snakes. But he was used to those things. But this idea of somebody that wanted to do harm to him, he hadn't thought about such a thing. So as he walked, he talked to Jesus about it. But then he was feeling so happy about belonging to Jesus that he started to sing again.
Take the name of Jesus with you, child of sorrow and of woe.
Further on,
it will
he
joy
sang
and comfort give
that
you.
chorus.
Take it then where'er you go.
Then, in the ditch, there were those three enemies. Atu didn't see them. He was busy singing triumphantly at the top of his lungs. But down in that ditch, the one man said, "That has to be him coming." The other man said, "Yeah, he's singing his heart out again." Then the third man said, "But we're not going to need to worry about that long. Nobody will even know where he went to after we're done with him." Well, the one reached for his gun, the other his big club, and the third had an axe. But Atu, Desta, he didn't know that those men were there. So he
Precious
started to sing
name,
again.
oh how
Right when
sweet,
he was above
hope of
them,
earth
he
and
started to
joy of
sing. And the one
heaven.
man said, "Now,
Take
let's get
the
him
name of
now."
Jesus ever
Testa was
as
singing.
a shield from every
And
snare.
those men, the one, he started to lift his gun so he could spring up and jump up those rocks and get to Atu, but his arms wouldn't move. It was like somebody had a hold of him. His legs wouldn't move. He couldn't even talk. The only thing that would move was his eyes. And it wasn't just him. His friend with the big club, the club just fell out of his hands, and his hands were like rags. His legs felt like noodles. And the third man was so scared suddenly about what was happening to his friends that his chocolate brown face turned gray with fear. He could not move either. None of them could move or say anything. And Ato, oblivious to the fact that they were there, continued going on down the path. When he was around the next hill, he started singing again, the chorus again.
At the name of Jesus bowing,
Those men
falling
down in the
prostrate at his
ditch, they could
feet.
move now. They could
King
move
of
their
kings and
arms, they
heaven
could
will
move their legs,
crown
they could
him
talk again,
when our
but they
journey
were
is
terrified.
complete.
The name of Jesus had kept them from doing their evil deed. Ato,
Precious
finishing that last
name, oh
chorus
how
that
sweet,
rang out over
hope
those
of
desert
earth and
hills,
joy of
came around another
heaven.
corner, and down in the valley he saw his little mud and stick house with a thatched roof that was full of happiness. And he was so glad. And he thought, "Oh, Jesus, you've been with me." He didn't know how much Jesus had been with him. And he headed down the hill thinking about his little boy, Johannes, and his lovely little wife. When he got to the bottom of that hill, out of the house ran his little son. And Atu called, "I'm here, Johannes. I'm home." And the little boy ran to his daddy. His wife came and stood in the doorway, and Atu, carrying his little son, looked at the house that was so full of happiness and love for Jesus. Atu had gotten home safely that day, and he got home safely every day after that. Thank you, boys and girls, for listening to our story and of
Take
how
the name of
a
Jesus
two
with
was
you,
protected by
child of
Jesus,
sorrow and of
and Jesus
woe.
will take care of you.
It will joy and
Bye
comfort
bye now.
give
I'll see you next
you.
week.
Take it then where'er you go.